The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers as I heard Ava's voice cut through the night air like a rusty blade. "You think Dad's clueless? You and Uncle Derek aren't even subtle anymore." I froze under the hood of my battered Ford pickup, parked in the driveway of what used to feel like home. Midnight in Millfield, Ohio, population 32,000 and shrinking, wasn't supposed to come with family drama echoing from kitchen windows. But here we were. My name's Jake Morrison, and I run Morrison's Auto and Body on the wrong side of town. 39 years old, hands permanently stained with motor oil, and apparently married to a woman who thinks I'm too stupid to notice when she's stepping out. The irony wasn't lost on me. I could diagnose a transmission problem from 3 blocks away, but somehow missed the obvious signs that my wife was servicing someone else's engine. "Mom, this is insane," Ava continued, her 17-year-old voice cracking with frustration. "Derek's married too. What happens when this blows up?" Sophia's response was muffled, but I caught enough to make my stomach clench. Something about temporary, and your father wouldn't understand anyway. Wouldn't understand. Right. Because apparently being a blue-collar mechanic meant I lacked the intellectual capacity to grasp basic adultery. I straightened up slowly, wiping my hands on the rag tucked into my belt. The autumn wind off Lake Erie carried the smell of fading leaves and industrial decay, the permanent perfume of our little corner of nowhere. Millfield had been declining ever since the steel mill closed 15 years ago, leaving behind empty storefronts, cracked sidewalks, and the kind of desperation that made people do foolish things, like cheat on their husbands with their brother-in-law, Derek, my wife's sister Maya's husband. Corporate lawyer, drives a BMW, wears suits that cost more than I make in a month, the kind of guy who calls me buddy at family gatherings while looking at me like I'm something he scraped off his Italian leather shoes. The kitchen light went out, and I heard footsteps on the stairs. Ava's room door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Sophia would be heading to our bedroom now, probably checking her phone for messages from her lover boy. The routine had become predictable once I started paying attention. I closed the truck's hood with deliberate quiet and headed for my workshop behind the house. The converted garage smelled like WD-40 and old coffee, lined with tool cabinets and half-finished projects. This was my sanctuary, the place where things made sense, where problems had solutions and everything had a proper order. Unlike my marriage, I'd suspected something was off for months. Sophia working late more often, taking calls in the bathroom, buying new underwear she never wore around me. Classic signs, obvious as a blown gasket. But I'd convinced myself I was being paranoid. Sophia was ambitious, driven, successful. She ran the architectural division at Hartwell and Associates downtown, designing office buildings and shopping centers. She made twice what I did and never let me forget it. Maybe that should have been my first clue. I grabbed a bottle of bourbon from behind the paint cans and poured 3 fingers into a coffee mug that read, "World's Greatest Dad," a Father's Day gift from Ava when she still thought I hung the moon. The whiskey burned, but not as much as the realization that my own daughter had been covering for her mother's affair. Uncle Derek. That's what Ava called him, even though he wasn't related by anything except marriage to Maya. Maya, Sophia's younger sister, the Instagram influencer with 40,000 followers and a lifestyle blog about living your best life. She posted photos of her perfect condo, perfect outfits, perfect marriage to the successful lawyer husband, except apparently Derek wasn't so perfect after all. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through Sophia's social media. There she was, smiling at camera angles designed to hide the crow's feet around her eyes. Comments from friends about how lucky she was, how perfect her life looked. If they only knew. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The bourbon was making me philosophical, which was dangerous territory. I'd learned that lesson in my boxing days, back when I thought I could punch my way to something better than Millfield. 3 years on the amateur circuit, decent record, until I took one too many hits and realized I wasn't getting any younger. That's when I opened the shop, married Sophia, tried to build something solid. 15 years later, solid felt more like quicksand. My phone buzzed. A text from Trish, my best friend and owner of Knockout Fitness across town. "You awake? Need to talk." Trish knew. Somehow, she always knew when things were falling apart. We'd been friends since high school, back when she was Patricia Williams and I was the scrappy kid who thought he could fight his way out of poverty. She transitioned 5 years ago and opened the gym, creating a space where people like us could work out our frustrations without judgment. "Workshop," I texted back. "Doors open." 20 minutes later, Trish's Jeep crunched up the gravel driveway. She appeared in the workshop doorway like a force of nature, 6 feet tall, silver hair in a ponytail, wearing a knockout fitness hoodie and the expression of someone who'd rather rip off a bandage than let it fester. "You look terrible," she said, accepting the bourbon I offered. "Thanks. Really what I needed to hear." "When did you figure it out?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Tonight, officially, though I've been an idiot for months." "You're not an idiot, Jake. You're trusting. There's a difference. Same result, though." Trish settled into the folding chair I kept for visitors, studying me with the intensity that made her such a good trainer. She could spot weakness, identify exactly where someone needed to improve. "So what's the plan?" she asked. "Plan? Don't play dumb. You've got that look. The same one you had before the Henderson fight when you knew you were going to take him apart in the 3rd round?" She wasn't wrong. Something was crystallizing in my mind, a cold clarity that felt both foreign and familiar. The nice guy approach hadn't worked. Being the understanding husband, the reliable provider, the man who fixed everyone else's problems while ignoring his own, that version of Jake Morrison was officially retired. "I need evidence first," I said. "Real proof, not just overheard conversations." And then I met her eyes, and she must have seen something there that made her sit back slightly. Then I stopped being the victim. Finding Sophia's burner phone was almost too easy. She'd hidden it in her gym bag, tucked behind a bottle of expensive face cream she never used at home. I discovered it 3 days after my conversation with Trish, while Sophia was in the shower and Ava was at school. The phone was a cheap prepaid model, the kind people bought when they didn't want their activities traced back to their regular accounts. Smart, actually. Sophia had always been the brains in our relationship. At least that's what she told everyone. The messages made my stomach turn, but not from heartbreak, from rage. "Can't wait to feel you inside me again," from Derek. "Your husband's working late tonight, perfect timing," from Sophia. And then, buried in a thread from 2 weeks ago, the message that changed everything. "Maybe I should try your sister next time, LOL. She's always flirting with Jake anyway." Sophia's response. "Maya would eat him alive. Might be fun to watch, though." Derek. "Your husband's too much of a loser to handle a real woman anyway." Sophia. "Tell me something I don't know." I sat on the edge of our bed, holding the phone with hands that wanted to crush it into plastic fragments. The shower was still running. Sophia would emerge in 15 minutes, towel wrapped around her body, pretending to be the faithful wife while planning her next rendezvous with my brother-in-law. The phone contained 3 months of messages, hotel reservations, and photos I wished I could unsee. They'd been meeting at the Lakeshore Motel twice a week, sometimes more, the same place where Sophia and I had spent our wedding night because we couldn't afford anything better. I memorized Derek's schedule from the messages: Tuesday and Thursday afternoons when he claimed to be in depositions, Saturday mornings while Maya was at yoga class. They had a system, a routine, the kind of careful planning that spoke to months of practice. My hands were surprisingly steady as I forwarded the most incriminating messages to my own phone, then deleted the evidence of the forwarding. Sophia emerged from the bathroom right as I was sliding the phone back into her gym bag. "You're up early," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Couldn't sleep. Big job coming in today." She nodded absently, already checking her regular phone for messages. The performance was flawless. Distracted wife, busy professional, woman with important things on her mind that didn't include her husband. "I'll be late tonight," she said. "Client dinner." "Which client?" The question caught her off guard. I never asked for details about her work. "The Henderson Project. You wouldn't know them." "Henderson." I filed the name away, knowing it was probably another lie in a web that stretched back months. After she left for work, I called in sick to the shop and drove to the Lakeshore Motel. The place looked exactly like what it was, a 40-room monument to bad decisions and temporary arrangements. The parking lot was cracked asphalt and regret, surrounded by the kind of businesses that thrived on people's worst impulses. I parked across the street at a gas station and waited. Sure enough, at 2:15 p.m., Derek's BMW pulled into the lot. He parked behind the building, away from street view. 15 minutes later, Sophia's Lexus joined it. They were in room 237 for exactly 90 minutes. I knew because I timed it, sitting in my truck with a clear view of the door, drinking coffee that had gone cold an hour earlier and planning my next move. When they emerged, Derek looked smug and satisfied. Sophia looked guilty but exhilarated. They kissed goodbye in the parking lot like teenagers, completely oblivious to the world around them. That night, I followed Derek home to the upscale subdivision where he and Maya lived in a house that cost more than I'd make in 10 years. I watched him pull into his 3-car garage, probably planning to shower off the scent of my wife before Maya returned from whatever she was doing. The BMW sat in the driveway for 30 seconds while the garage door opened. 30 seconds was all I needed. I'd brought a bag of sugar from our kitchen, the kind Sophia used for her weekend baking projects back when she pretended to care about domestic activities. Unscrewing the gas cap took 5 seconds. Pouring in the sugar took another 10. The rest was just walking away like I belonged in the neighborhood. Sugar in a gas tank is mostly urban legend. It doesn't actually destroy an engine, but it does cause expensive problems that take time and money to diagnose. Derek would spend the next week dealing with mechanics, tow trucks, and the kind of inconvenience that makes people paranoid about who might be targeting them. I was back home before Sophia returned from her client dinner, sitting in my workshop with a bourbon and a smile that felt foreign on my face. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw what you did to Derek's car. Impressive." I stared at the message, ice forming in my chest. Someone had been watching me watch them. Someone knew exactly what I'd done and why. Before I could respond, another message appeared. "Don't worry, your secret's safe. We should talk soon. Maya." Maya. Sophia's sister, Derek's wife. The woman who'd apparently witnessed me sabotaging her husband's car and found it impressive rather than alarming. I poured another bourbon and tried to figure out what kind of game I'd just entered. Because if Maya knew about the affair and was reaching out to me instead of confronting Derek or Sophia, then this situation was more complicated than a simple case of adultery. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo. Maya in a black dress, standing in what looked like a hotel room, smiling at the camera with the kind of expression that promised trouble. The message that followed made my bourbon taste like ash. "Sophia always said you were too boring to take risks." Guess she was wrong. Room 412, Marriott downtown. 1 hour. I sat in the workshop until 3 a.m., staring at that photo and trying to decide if I was about to make the smartest decision of my life or the stupidest. Maya was offering something. Information, alliance, or just another layer of betrayal. But she was also the only person who seemed to understand that the rules of this game had changed. When Sophia slipped into bed beside me at 3:30, smelling like expensive wine and lies, I pretended to be asleep. But my mind was racing with possibilities, each one darker and more satisfying than the last. The nice guy was gone. What was taking his place might be something Sophia and Derek weren't prepared to handle. The Marriott downtown was the kind of place where people went to pretend they were more important than they actually were. Marble floors, gold fixtures, and the sort of generic luxury that cost extra but felt hollow. I found myself in the elevator at exactly midnight, riding to the 4th floor to meet my wife's sister in what was probably the worst decision I'd made since marrying Sophia. Room 412 was at the end of a carpeted hallway that muffled sound and encouraged discretion. I knocked twice, soft enough to maintain plausible deniability if this was some kind of setup. Maya opened the door wearing jeans and a sweater, not the black dress from the photo. Her makeup was understated, her smile genuine but cautious. She looked like someone's sister, not the Instagram influencer with the carefully curated life. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said, stepping aside to let me enter. I wasn't sure either. The room was standard hotel. Queen bed, desk, chair by the window overlooking the lake. Maya had ordered room service. There were 2 glasses and a bottle of wine on the small table. She'd thought this through, planned it like a business meeting rather than whatever I'd been imagining. "Sit," she said, pouring wine into both glasses. "We need to talk." I remained standing, studying her face for signs of deception. Maya was 33, 3 years younger than Sophia, with the same dark hair and green eyes, but none of Sophia's sharp edges. Where Sophia was all angles and ambition, Maya was curves and calculated charm. "You know about Derek and Sophia," I said. "I've known for 4 months. And you're okay with it?" Maya laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Okay. Jake, I'm the one who introduced them." The wine glass in my hand suddenly felt heavy. "What?" "Sit down, please. This is going to take a while." I sat, but kept my distance from the small table. Maya settled across from me, her hands wrapped around her wine glass like it was an anchor. "Derek and I have been having problems for 2 years," she began. "He's controlling, demanding, treats me like an accessory to his successful lawyer image. The Instagram thing? That was his idea. He wanted a wife who looked perfect online, who made him look good to his partners." "So you decided to help him cheat?" "I decided to give him enough rope to hang himself." Maya's smile was sharp now, predatory. "Derek thinks he's smarter than everyone else. He thinks he can manipulate people, use them, discard them when they're no longer useful. I wanted to show him what that felt like." The pieces were starting to fit together, but the picture they formed was uglier than I'd expected. Sophia was the rope. Sophia was perfect, successful, beautiful, married to someone Derek considered beneath him. She represented everything he thought he deserved but couldn't have. And what did Sophia represent to you? Maya's expression hardened. Competition. She's always been the smart one, the successful one, the one who got everything handed to her. Did you know she stole my boyfriend in high school and my college roommate and the job I wanted at Hartwell and Associates? I didn't know any of that. Sophia rarely talked about her past, especially her relationship with Maya. I'd assumed they were close, supportive sisters who'd grown apart as adults. So this is revenge, I said. This is justice. Derek gets to feel what it's like to be betrayed. Sophia gets to lose everything she thinks makes her special. And you? What about me? Maya leaned forward, her green eyes intense. You get to decide what kind of man you want to be. The victim who takes it quietly or the one who takes control. I set down the wine glass without tasting it. What are you proposing? Partnership. I have information you need. You have access I don't. Together we can make them both pay for what they've done. Why should I trust you? You just admitted to orchestrating this whole thing. Because I'm the only one being honest with you. Derek thinks you're a pathetic loser who'll never fight back. Sophia thinks you're too stupid to figure out what's happening. They're both wrong, aren't they? She was right about that. The rage that had been building for days was crystallizing into something colder, more focused. The part of me that had once stepped into a boxing ring and methodically dismantled opponents was waking up after years of dormancy. What kind of information? I asked. Maya reached into her purse and pulled out a tablet. She swiped through several screens before turning it toward me. Derek's been skimming money from his client accounts. Nothing major, just enough to fund his lifestyle upgrades, the car, the clothes, the hotel rooms with your wife. The screen showed bank statements, credit card bills, and what looked like doctored expense reports. If this was real, Derek wasn't just an adulterer. He was embezzling from his law firm. How did you get this? I'm his wife. I have access to everything. The question is, what do we do with it? I studied Maya's face, looking for the trap. There had to be one. People didn't just hand over ammunition against their own spouses without expecting something in return. What do you want from me? I asked. I want Sophia destroyed. Her reputation, her career, her smug sense of superiority. I want her to lose everything that makes her feel better than everyone else. And Derek? Derek's going to prison? The embezzlement charges will see to that. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Maya would provide evidence of Derek's financial crimes while I documented the affair. Derek would face criminal charges, Sophia would lose her job when the scandal broke, and both of them would be left with nothing but each other, assuming their relationship survived the fallout. There's one more thing, Maya said, reaching into her purse again. This time she pulled out a key. Derek's been keeping records of the affair. Photos, videos, a whole digital scrapbook of his conquest. It's on a laptop in his home office. You want me to break into your house? I want you to retrieve evidence of what they've done to us. Derek's at a conference in Cleveland until Sunday. I'll be in Chicago for a photo shoot. The house will be empty. I took the key, feeling its weight in my palm. This was the point of no return. Once I walked into Derek's house, once I started actively participating in Maya's plan, there would be no going back to being the nice guy who fixed cars and minded his own business. Jake, Maya said softly, they think we're weak. They think we'll just take it and move on. Are you going to prove them right? I pocketed the key and stood up. No, I'm going to prove them very, very wrong. Maya's smile was beautiful and terrible. Good, because I have so much more to show you. As I walked back to the elevator, I realized I'd just made a deal with someone who might be even more dangerous than the people we were planning to destroy. But for the first time in months, I felt like I was in control of my own life. That feeling was intoxicating, and probably exactly what Maya was counting on. Derek's house was a monument to everything I wasn't. Successful, refined, expensive. 3 stories of architectural perfection in Millfield's most exclusive neighborhood, surrounded by manicured lawns and the kind of silence that money bought. I sat in my truck across the street at 2 a.m., Maya's key burning in my pocket like a guilty conscience. The street was empty, lined with houses where people slept soundly behind security systems and the comfortable assumption that bad things happened to other people. Derek's BMW was gone, replaced by a rental car while he dealt with his mysterious engine problems. Maya's Mercedes was also absent, leaving the 3-car garage looking hollow and abandoned. I'd spent the past week planning this moment, studying Derek's routine through Maya's information and my own surveillance. He was in Cleveland until Sunday, attending some legal conference that was probably just an excuse to network and drink expensive scotch. Maya was in Chicago, posting Instagram stories about Fashion Week and living her best life. The key fit perfectly in the side door that led from the garage into the house. Maya had disabled the security system before leaving, claiming she'd forgotten to set it in her rush to catch a flight. The house was dark except for a few strategically placed nightlights that cast long shadows across hardwood floors and designer furniture. Derek's office was on the second floor, overlooking the backyard where he'd installed a pool that cost more than my annual income. The room was exactly what I'd expected. Leather furniture, law books, diplomas on the walls, and a massive desk that screamed importance and authority. The laptop was exactly where Maya said it would be, tucked in the bottom drawer of a filing cabinet behind folders of legal documents. A sleek silver machine that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. I plugged in the external drive Maya had given me and began copying files. The laptop contained exactly what she'd promised. A digital archive of Derek's affair with my wife, photos of them together at the motel, videos I refused to watch, and a folder labeled Sophia that contained enough evidence to end both their careers. But as I scrolled through the files, I found something Maya hadn't mentioned. A folder labeled Maya that contained similar content. Photos, videos, messages. Derek hadn't just been cheating on his wife with my wife. He'd been documenting both relationships, collecting trophies like some kind of perverted hunter. The messages in Maya's folder told a different story than the one she'd shared with me. These weren't the communications of a woman orchestrating her husband's downfall. These were love letters, passionate exchanges, plans for a future together. Maya and Derek had been having an affair for over a year, long before Sophia entered the picture. I sat back in Derek's expensive chair, trying to process what I was seeing. Maya had lied to me. The grieving wife, the woman seeking justice for Derek's betrayal, it was all performance. She and Derek were partners, and Sophia was just their latest victim. But then I found the folder that changed everything again. Project Sophia contained detailed plans for seducing my wife, breaking up her marriage, and destroying her career. Maya and Derek had researched Sophia's weaknesses, her ambitions, her resentments about our marriage. They'd planned every step of the affair, from the initial meeting at a professional conference to the hotel room encounters. The final document in the folder was titled Exit Strategy. It outlined how Derek would eventually dump Sophia, leaving her divorced, disgraced, and alone while he and Maya disappeared to start a new life somewhere else. They'd been planning to take Derek's embezzled money and run, leaving behind the wreckage of multiple marriages and careers. Maya hadn't been seeking justice. She'd been seeking the perfect crime. I copied everything, including the files Maya didn't know I'd found. The external drive contained enough evidence to destroy all three of them, Derek, Maya, and Sophia. The question was what to do with it. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "How's it going? Find everything okay?" I stared at the message, anger building in my chest like pressure in a boiler. Maya was checking on me, making sure her unwitting accomplice was following the script. She probably thought she was so clever, manipulating the stupid mechanic into doing her dirty work. "Found more than I expected," I texted back. "We need to talk." "Something wrong?" "Everything's wrong, but not the way you think." I finished copying the files and returned the laptop to its hiding place. The house felt different now, not like the symbol of success I'd envied, but like a crime scene waiting to be discovered. Derek and Maya had turned their home into a base of operations for destroying other people's lives. As I drove home through empty streets, I realized I had a choice to make. I could expose all three of them, watch Derek go to prison, Maya lose her perfect life, and Sophia face the consequences of her choices. Justice would be served, but I'd still be the victim, the man who'd been played by everyone around him. Or I could do something else entirely. By the time I reached my driveway, I'd made my decision. Maya thought she was using me to destroy Sophia and Derek. Derek thought he was getting away with embezzlement and adultery. Sophia thought she was having a harmless affair with no consequences. They were all wrong. I wasn't going to be anyone's victim or accomplice. I was going to be the one who controlled how this story ended, and none of them were going to like the final chapter. The next morning, I called in sick to the shop again and drove to Knockout Fitness. Trish was training a client when I arrived, but she took one look at my face and wrapped up the session early. "You look like someone who's made a very dangerous decision," she said, locking the front door behind her departing client. 3 dangerous decisions, actually. I told her everything: the affair, Maya's manipulation, Derek's embezzlement, the evidence I'd collected. Trish listened without interruption, her expression growing darker with each revelation. "So what's the plan?" she asked when I finished. "I'm going to give each of them exactly what they deserve, but not the way any of them expect." "That sounds ominous." "It should, because I'm done being the nice guy who gets walked on by everyone. It's time for them to learn what happens when you underestimate Jake Morrison." Trish studied my face for a long moment. You sure about this? Once you go down this road, there's no coming back. I'm sure. The only question is whether you're going to help me or try to talk me out of it. She smiled, but there was steel behind it. Jake, I've been waiting 15 years for you to get angry about something that mattered. Count me in. The Millfield Autumn Festival was the kind of small-town event that brought everyone together once a year to pretend our community wasn't slowly fading. Held at the abandoned amusement park on the lakeshore, it featured local vendors, live music, and enough gossip to fuel conversations until Christmas. This year, it was also going to feature the most spectacular public humiliation in the town's history. I'd spent 2 weeks preparing for this moment, orchestrating every detail with the precision of a military campaign. Derek was back from Cleveland, dealing with ongoing car troubles and growing paranoid about who might be targeting him. Maya had returned from Chicago with new photos and a false sense of security. Sophia was continuing her affair, oblivious to the storm building around her. They all thought they were in control. They were about to learn otherwise. The festival's main stage was set up near the old carousel, surrounded by food trucks and craft booths. Local politicians gave speeches, the high school band played fight songs, and families wandered around eating funnel cake and pretending everything was normal. I'd volunteered to help with the sound system, which gave me access to the microphones and speakers. Trish was working the crowd, positioning herself near key people with cell phones ready to record. Everything was in place. At exactly 3 p.m., during the lull between the mayor's speech and the pie-eating contest, I took the stage. "Excuse me, folks," I said into the microphone, my voice carrying across the crowd of several hundred people. "I'd like to share a story with you all. A story about trust, betrayal, and what happens when people think they're smarter than everyone else." The crowd quieted, sensing something unusual was happening. I spotted Sophia near the craft booths, her face going pale as she realized I was on stage. Derek was by the food trucks, looking confused, but not yet alarmed. Maya was taking selfies near the old Ferris wheel, too focused on her phone to notice what was happening. "My name is Jake Morrison," I continued. "Some of you know me from Morrison's Auto and Body. I'm the guy who fixes your cars when they break down, who stays late to help when you're stranded. I'm also the guy whose wife has been having an affair with her sister's husband for the past 4 months." The crowd stirred, whispers rippling through the gathered families. This wasn't the usual festival entertainment, but it was certainly more interesting than the pie-eating contest. "Now, adultery isn't uncommon," I said, my voice steady and conversational. "People make mistakes, marriages fall apart, hearts get broken. But this story is special because it involves conspiracy, embezzlement, and a level of manipulation that would impress professional con artists." I could see Sophia pushing through the crowd toward the stage, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Derek was moving too, but more cautiously, probably trying to figure out how much I actually knew. "You see, my wife Sophia Morrison, that's her there in the blue dress trying to reach the stage, didn't just decide to cheat on her own. She was seduced as part of an elaborate scheme by her sister Maya and Maya's husband Derek to destroy her life and steal money from Derek's law firm." The crowd was fully engaged now, phones appearing as people started recording. This was the kind of scandal that would be discussed in every coffee shop and hair salon in Millfield for months. Maya had finally looked up from her phone, her face a mask of shock and rage. She was too far away to reach the stage quickly, trapped behind a crowd that was more interested in hearing my story than letting her through. "Derek Hoffman," I continued, pointing toward the food trucks where Derek stood frozen like a deer in headlights, "has been embezzling money from his clients to fund his lifestyle. Maya Hoffman has been helping him plan to disappear with the stolen money after destroying Sophia's career and marriage. And Sophia, well, Sophia just thought she was having a harmless affair with no consequences." Derek finally snapped out of his paralysis and started pushing toward the stage, but several large men from the crowd, friends of mine from the gym, moved to block his path. They weren't threatening, just creating obstacles that would slow him down. "I have evidence of all of this," I said, pulling out a tablet. Bank records, messages, photos, videos, and detailed plans for what they called Project Sophia. I've already shared copies with the police, the State Bar Association, and Derek's law firm. But I thought you all deserved to hear the truth directly from me. Sophia had reached the edge of the stage and was trying to climb up, but Trish appeared beside her with a firm hand on her arm. "Let him finish," Trish said loudly enough for the microphone to pick up. "You've had months to tell your side of the story." "Uncle, the beautiful thing about the truth," I continued, "is that it has a way of setting everyone free. Derek's free from the burden of pretending to be an honest lawyer, Maya's free from the exhausting task of maintaining her perfect online image, and Sophia's free from a marriage she obviously found suffocating." I could see police officers moving through the crowd, not to arrest me, but to arrest Derek. I'd given them everything they needed that morning, including evidence of the embezzlement and detailed documentation of the conspiracy. Derek saw them coming and tried to run, but there was nowhere to go in the crowd. Maya thought she was so clever, I said, watching as Derek was handcuffed near the funnel cake stand. She thought she could manipulate the stupid mechanic into helping her destroy my wife while she and Derek rode off into the sunset with stolen money. But here's the thing about underestimating people. Sometimes they surprise you. Maya had finally reached the front of the crowd, her face twisted with fury. "You bastard!" she screamed. "You don't understand anything." "I understand everything," I replied calmly. "I understand that you and Derek have been planning this for over a year. I understand that you seduced my wife as part of a con game. I understand that you thought I was too stupid to figure it out. Most importantly, I understand that all three of you are about to lose everything you care about." Sophia had stopped trying to reach the stage and was standing in the crowd, tears streaming down her face as the reality of her situation hit her. Her affair wasn't a romantic escape. It was a setup. Her lover wasn't a successful lawyer. He was a criminal. Her sister wasn't her ally. She was her enemy. "The police have Derek for embezzlement," I announced. "Maya's sponsors have been notified about her involvement in fraud and conspiracy. Sophia's employer has received evidence of her participation in unethical behavior, and I've filed for divorce, citing adultery and requesting full custody of our daughter." The crowd was completely silent now, except for the sound of phones recording and Derek shouting protests as he was led away by police officers. "I want everyone to remember this moment," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the festival grounds. "Remember what happens when people think they can use others without consequences. Remember what happens when you underestimate someone because of their job or their bank account or their willingness to trust." I set down the microphone and walked off the stage, leaving behind the wreckage of 3 lives and the satisfaction of a job well done. The crowd parted as I walked through, some people nodding approval, others staring in shock at what they'd witnessed. Trish fell into step beside me as we headed toward the parking lot. "Feel better?" she asked. "I feel like myself again," I replied, "for the first time in years." Behind us, the festival was dissolving into chaos as people processed what they'd heard and seen. Derek was being loaded into a police car, Maya was screaming at anyone who would listen, and Sophia was sitting alone on a bench, staring at the ruins of her carefully constructed life. I'd promised them all exactly what they deserved. Derek got his criminal charges and public humiliation. Maya got her perfect image destroyed and her conspiracy exposed. Sophia got the consequences of her choices served up in front of the entire town. And I got something I hadn't expected: respect. Not just from others, but from myself. As we reached my truck, I realized this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. The nice guy who'd let people walk all over him was gone, replaced by someone who understood that sometimes you have to fight for what matters. Maya had been right about one thing. I'd had to decide what kind of man I wanted to be. I'd chosen to be the kind who doesn't get played twice. The autumn wind off Lake Erie carried the sound of sirens and shouting voices, but all I felt was the calm satisfaction of a job completed. They'd thought I was weak, stupid, controllable. They'd thought wrong. And now everyone in Millfield knew exactly what happened when you made that particular mistake with Jake Morrison. The festival would end, the gossip would eventually die down, and life would move on. But the lesson would remain. Some people are only as weak as you assume they are, right up until they decide to prove you wrong. I drove home through streets that felt different now, past neighbors who would never look at me the same way again. That was fine with me. I'd rather be respected than pitied, feared than dismissed. The nice guy was gone. What had taken his place was something far more dangerous. A man who'd learned exactly what he was capable of when pushed too far. And that, I thought as I pulled into my driveway, was a lesson worth teaching.